everyone, it's Natasha Bulawifa from PenPadPurpose.com with the first installment in this month's SyncUp series, Christmas Unwrapped. Today's segment is titled, Happy Birthday, Jesus? Question mark. For the next few minutes, we're going to be syncing up with God about the Christmas celebration of the birth of Jesus Christ. Our key text for today is Isaiah chapter 9, verse 6. Now, if you ask the average Christian in the United States, when was Jesus Christ born, chances are you're going to hear December 25th. But if you ask the average Christian in Armenia, chances are you're going to hear January 6th. And if you ask certain modern biblical scholars, chances are you're going to hear something like the end of September. So why are there so many dates, and where do they all come from? And more importantly, who's right? Well, let's start from the beginning. Christmas, or the birth of Christ, wasn't always celebrated. Celebrations were never mentioned in the New Testament, and even early Christian writers like Irenaeus and Tertullian from the 1st and 2nd centuries made no mention of any special feast or anything commemorating Jesus' birthday. What was commemorated and discussed extensively was the crucifixion and the resurrection of Christ, which kind of explains why Easter was established as a holiday so early on in Christian history. So, when did people begin to start celebrating Christmas? Well, first there had to be interest in even figuring out the date of Christ's birth, which didn't gain popularity as a pursuit until the end of the 2nd century. And let me tell you guys, it was a mess. The guesses were all over the calendar. There was lots of uncertainty. But by the 4th century, nearly 200 years later, two dates dominated. December 25th in the Roman Empire in the West, and January 6th in Egypt and Asia Minor in the East. Now, for most Christians, December 25th prevails today. And although some in Asian countries still acknowledge January 6th, for many that day has now become known as the Feast of Epiphany in recognition of the Magi's arrival in Bethlehem. And the period in between the two dates, well, that became later known as the 12 Days of Christmas. But where did these dates come from? How were they calculated? Well, you may have heard some theories about December 25th actually coming from pagan winter solar festivals like Saturnalia and the Feast of Sol Invictus. The theory goes that Christians chose that December 25th for evangelistic purposes to make pagans more open and comfortable to Christianity by linking the birth of Jesus to existing pagan holidays. But this is kind of unlikely. You see, during the time between the 2nd and 4th centuries, when December 25th began to be recognized as Jesus' birthday, well, during this time, the persecuted Christian minority was going out of its way to distance itself from the majority in its pagan religious practices. And on top of that, this theory didn't emerge until nearly 1,000 years after December 25th was first introduced. So where did it come from? Well, funny enough, both December 25th and January 6th come from the same dating calculation, just with different starting points. You see, it all came down to a belief that Jesus died and was conceived on the same date. This came from a notion from ancient Jewish traditions in the Talmud that creation and redemption should occur at the same time of the year. Even if this was true, there were two schools of thought about when Jesus was crucified, that is, the time of redemption. In 200 CE, Tertullian of Carthage calculated that the crucifixion occurred on March 25th. If Jesus was conceived on that same date, when you add 9 months, guess what you get? December 25th. But in the East, they didn't use the Hebrew calendar like Tertullian was using. They used Greek calendars. And from that, their result was that the crucifixion actually occurred on April the 6th. Add 9 months, you get January 6th. But how does this all sync up with the Bible? Well, there are modern biblical scholars that believe that there's clear indications in Scripture that refute both December 25th and January 6th. The arguments come from scriptures like Luke 2. Argument 1. Jesus' birth journey to Bethlehem is triggered by a requirement for his parents to register in their hometown for the Roman census. Well, censuses weren't done in the winter. Travel wasn't like it was today. It was terrible. And traveling in the winter, well, it was nearly impossible, which meant getting a complete census was pretty much impossible. Argument 2. Shepherds were in the field with their sheep during Jesus' birth. Again, if this was supposed to happen in the winter, this practice didn't really jive. You see, shepherds wouldn't be out in the winter with their sheep. The sheep would be corralled. The practice of being outdoors with their sheep at night would actually have been more conducive with a springtime time frame. These scholars believe that the Bible points to another date entirely based on Luke 1. We know from Luke 1 that Elizabeth, John the Baptist's mother, Mary's cousin, was about 6 months pregnant around the time of Jesus' conception. But when was John conceived? Well, John's father, Zacharias, was a priest during Abijah. Historically, this temple service is calculated to have occurred during June 13th through June 19th. After he completed his service, we know from Luke 1 that he comes home to Elizabeth and conceives John. Now, theorizing that this happened sometime in late June, this means Elizabeth most likely had John at the end of March the following year. And since John was 6 months older than Jesus, that places Jesus' birth estimate around the end of September. You know, guys, this is a lot of information. Good information, but a lot of information. And when I was researching and going through all this, I was like, God, what am I supposed to do with this? What's the take-home message? What should I walk away with? He led me to a scripture in Isaiah chapter 9, verse 6, which I'll read to you now. For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government will be upon his shoulders, and his name will be called Wonderful, Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. You know, all this history and biblical deductions about the real birth date of Jesus is fascinating, and it's important to know. But what's most important isn't when Jesus was born, it's the fact that he was born at all. Can I keep it real with you guys? It doesn't matter to me if God brought redemption in this world in September, December, January, or leap year. I'm just happy redemption came. And if a made-up day in December gives me a whole season to tell the world why I'm so happy and to actually have them listen, well, so be it. I'll end with this week's words for sinking. Redemption is not a question of when, but a question of who. Who are the redeemed and who is the Redeemer? Now, take some time during the rest of your day to reflect on the Sink a Little Deeper questions posted below this video. And don't be shy, be heard. Share your reflections by posting a comment. Well, that's all for today. Until next time, remember, do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly. Bye for now, everyone.